All right, we'll get started. My name is Kaushik Banerjee. I'm the General Manager for Regalix Digital. And the digital business unit at Regalix engages in creating marketing collateral for our clients. So we do a lot of white papers, videos, infographics, data sheets, you name it, websites, website content, that type of stuff. So that's kind of the business we are in. My background, I have several years or decades in various kinds of product engineering, and I moved to the marketing side of the house about 5 years ago. And in my most recent past, I spent about a decade at VMware in various leadership roles. I'm going to talk today about doing an effective product demo. I initially started with the topic being the perfect demo, but I realized that you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be effective. Now, anybody who has done a demo has experienced one of these things. Way into the demo, you realize that the customer is asking questions about stuff that you didn't talk about and didn't intend to talk about. You realize very close to the end of the meeting that there were a few key features that you needed to show that you never got around to showing. And of course, then there is the nightmare scenario where you're showing live product. You had checked it 5 minutes before you got on the demo, and it was working, and in front of the prospect it does not. The interesting thing is that obviously these things make the demo imperfect, and you want to avoid them. You want to plan to avoid them, but they can still be effective. They're just not perfect. So why do we do demos in the first place? So by the time we are having a conversation with a prospect in a demo context, the prospect has probably had other conversations with other people on your side anyway. So there have been sales presentations made at various layers. We have talked to practitioners who will actually use the product. We have talked to buyers. We have talked to decision makers. We have to talk to people above them. We have talked to business lines who will derive peripheral benefits from the product or solution we are offering. All of those conversations have happened. Except that the prospect has, everybody at that prospect has had those conversations with various other vendors. And they've had them in their past lives. And they have realized that everything that comes across in a sales presentation in those conversations isn't always the derived benefit once the product is implemented. So in some ways, what you're trying to show in a demo is that what we have talked about is not vaporware. It actually exists in product. It's not coming that feature is not coming 6 months from now, a year from now. It's actually already there. It gives the customer a look and feel for how to use the product. And whereas when you talk about it in terms of benefits that you can derive from the product, it's kind of nebulous. I kind of get what you'll do, but I don't quite understand how you'll actually make it happen. Seeing it in action takes away that haze, and it makes it real. The other thing that we want to do in a demo is to clearly demonstrate that the product is easy to use. There are lots of things that lots of products can do, but a customer has tried and failed at some of those, even though it is clear that the product is capable of doing it. When the customers, practitioners actually try it, it doesn't always come to them quite as easily. And one of the objectives of doing a good demo is to show that not only are those features real, not only do they already exist, they're actually easy enough to use that the prospect will be able to use it should the prospect implement that product. So those are our goals. How do we get there? So before the demo, we need to do some planning. So, and what's involved in that planning? The first and the most important thing is to know your audience. And I kind of say that knowing that all of us in customer-facing roles have been told to know the audience at all times. And for any really, is there a setting where it's okay for you to not know your audience? And there probably isn't. But it's worth pointing out again that doing a demo is really important. And I kind of draw back on my own experience being an engineer. When I was being asked to do a demo, I said, yeah, sure, I can do it. And the sales guy would say, well, let me tell you something about the customer and what's going on in the account. And I'm like, no, I know the whole product. No worries. Wherever the customer needs to go, no worries. I can take care of it. And that's how you kind of get to the demos where you get the orthogonal question, because as an engineer, I wanted to talk about the thing that was the coolest, not the thing that was the most relevant or important to the customer. It took me a while to get there. In some ways, I'm qualified to do this presentation, not because I have done the perfect demo, but because I have done so many imperfect ones and maybe some ineffective ones. And the key thing that I could have done better in those situations was to have spent the time with whoever has talked to that account to understand what kind of questions has the customer already asked, because the questions they asked indicate what they're actually interested in. Even though they may not have talked about specific parts of the product, because frankly, they don't know the product, but they're talking through certain areas that are important. And that automatically should point you to the parts of the product that you should be talking about. Have the other people who have talked to the account established what pain they have today? Because once again, that can direct you to where do you spend time. What parts of the product do you spend time talking about? And not only can you talk to the other people in the account who have talked to the customer, you can also do your own research. You can look at the company bios. If you're doing an executive briefing, then most of those folks would be in the company bio. You can look at LinkedIn profiles for the attendees and kind of get a sense for what their background is and what they're likely to be asking you. So that's key research that you must do. And then once you have that, then you have the ability to craft a message. Once you have decided that these are the areas based on expressed interest, customer's pain, bios, these are the things I'll be talking about, then how do you talk about those things, not in terms of features and functionality of product, but in terms of problems that they solve? So you're talking about a story of what happens on an assembly line if you're talking to a manufacturing type organization. What kind of problems do they face? What happens when you have a breakdown and how do you react to it? Placing it in those terms puts the customer at home. And whenever you're telling a story, you want the customer to imagine the circumstance as much as possible, because then it's a fuller story. You're placing them in the story. And once you do that, then everything else that you say hits home much better. So that's the next part, make the feature relatable. So what that means is if you're talking to a manufacturing industry, talk about the manufacturing floor and the shop floor and the assembly line. If you talk about a shop floor and you're actually talking to a organization that does software development, that's probably not going to go as well. So they are much more likely to react to what happens when you have a day zero security bug exposed, or you have a massive failure in a production down situation in one of your largest customers. So they are much more likely to place themselves in that story versus the manufacturing, versus the shop floor story. And then as we craft the message, the last thing that we absolutely have to do is to show a vision for the future that is improved. As we talk through what kind of problems that they face today, we need to now present that once this product or solution is implemented, how things will get simpler, easier, smoother for the customer. So that's the part of the message that you have to craft before you actually get to the demo. What else can you do so you actually execute well during the demo? Rehearse. That's the key thing. And what rehearsal does is you have gone through the slides or gone through the product walkthrough that you're going to follow. And you kind of have an idea of every sentence that you're going to say. You do not need to memorize them because frankly, if you memorize them, it'll look very, very prepared and not quite as natural, and it actually hurts. So there is some such thing as over-rehearsing your pitch. So, but you're spending time kind of looking through each slide and having an idea of what sentences, what thoughts you'll cover with that section. When you do that, when you have rehearsed ones, you also use less filler words. You do not go back and say, oh, and by the way, on that last slide, I also needed to do this. It keeps you on time. So you know that you have 8 slides, you have approximately 2, 3, 4 minutes, and you know that one of these slides is a 7-minute slide. But if you know that, then you are not panicking saying, oh, I'm 4 slides in and I'm already 15 minutes in. I don't have enough time. No, because you know that the 4th slide was one that was supposed to take more time. If you are doing a live demo and there are fields that are description fields that you want to fill out well because otherwise the product doesn't quite look right, then make sure that you have a way to cut paste those. You don't want to be typing into large fields, making typos, backspacing over them, and then refilling them. It's just a waste of time. It doesn't look clean. It doesn't look smooth. And the customer leaves with the impression that the overall product experience is not smooth, even though what you were doing was typing into a text field incorrectly. And that's where the last part comes in. Make all actions look the simplest it can, because that's one of our objectives of the demo. We're trying to show that the product is really, really easy to use. And if it's so easy to use, then shouldn't the demo also flow very smoothly and look very easy? That's really what we want to do. The other part on making sure your execution goes well is having a backup plan. This is especially true if you're going to be doing a live demo or presenting content of a network. And there might be situations where you may not be able to pull that offline content down, but then you need to have another plan, some other content that you can show should that network be down. Live product demos, sometimes we have to do them because finally we are trying to show product in action. A live demo is important. But there will be times, even when 5 minutes before the demo, from that very same location, you have tried that very same software, very same installation and configuration environment. But sometimes it will fail in front of the customer. It just happens. At that point, you need to have something else to fall back on. And you need something else that will cover you well enough so it looks like the customer thinks that they came close enough to seeing live product that you do not need to go back and do it again. Obviously, we do not want to say we are showing live product when we are not. That's the absolute no-no. But if you can show exact product in action and how the flow works, then you're showing a good enough simulation of how product works that the customer may be satisfied that he has seen something that is close enough. What do we do during the demo? The most important thing is if you can get the prospects to talk. That means you have full engagement from the room. And the more the engagement, you may not get through all of the things that you wanted to show and every last feature that you had in plan because you had packed it in. And, as long as everything took 2 minutes or less, you'd have been fine. But if you have prioritized correctly and you're showing the right things first, and the customer is engaged on those right things, which means you have done your homework well, you have identified pain well, you have identified interest well, then you're home free anyway. You spend all the time talking about how their life will improve as a result of this product or solution. You're talking about how their pain points will go away with their current environment. And it doesn't matter if all of the things you had in plan were actually shown or not, because the important things are getting shown. Run a periodic time check. If you have an agenda and you have 3 really important items and the first one has taken 40 minutes of the hour you have, then at that point it's okay for us to throw a little bit of a stop on that discussion and move on to the other two that really need to get covered. And the reason for that is that you might have multiple personalities in the room, and your first topic may appeal to one of those people, but there are three others who really need to see that the second topic is actually well covered. So making sure that you get to some of that coverage is important. So while you want to get to a conversation, you want to be interactive, you also have a base set of priorities that you must cover, and you need to make sure that you manage your time to make sure that happens. And then during the demo, if things do go wrong, remember the backup plan that you do have. Instead of struggling with the live product and fighting with it, no, I can make it work, go into a quick debugging session. You basically want to move on and quickly get to your backup plan and not fiddle with stuff for any longer than you absolutely have to. So at Regalix, we built a platform called OSET for enablement. And what OSET does well is it allows you to easily create very rich content. And one of those things that we can do really well is include realistic offline demos. So what we really pride ourselves on is being able to easily edit and create rich content and organize it in various ways. But the offline functionality that we have is something that is really spectacular. So I'll do a quick demo of how that works. So these offline demos are actually extracted from a video. It can be done without that, but this one specifically was extracted from a video demonstration. And what we are able to do is extract key frames from that video and automatically hotbox whatever key clicks that need to be done for the demo to progress. Now in this one we left two cursors on. We can actually eliminate the second one. This one is more for demo purposes to show how it works. So as you can see, the auto deploy box is now selected and there's a cursor on it. I take my cursor on it and I click on it and it moves to the next step. It simulates the typing that you have to do to actually make the product work. Simulates how you would click on a checkbox to enable that, click on the OK, and it actually has the movement to the next screen. In some of these cases, you'll actually see that it's actually showing how the mouse movement causes the product to highlight different features. So since this is extracted from a video and we have all of those frames, we can choose to keep all of that flow in. These are, some of these things you also see, like, I don't know if on the WebEx it was clear that there was a transition here, but from the previous step to this one, you actually saw a bar moving, a progress bar. So things like that make it look like it's a very, very, it's very realistic product. Now, obviously, as I said before, we do not want to present this as product. We want to present this as an offline demo, but this comes so close that the customer's need to see actual product is diminished, because this gives you a close enough simulation of how the product works that actually seeing the product in action is no longer important. So that's all I had for today, and thank you for attending the webinar.